Namaste everyone, and welcome to our second sutra of the Sankhya Karika series. So in this particular video, we're now going to move forward from the previous segment and start getting into, again, why is it so important to study the Sankhya Karika and what unique emphasis is the Sankhya Karika providing as compared to previously given solutions on how to alleviate suffering and how to overcome the three different types of pain. So having said that, this second sutra is now making a direct comparison with the earlier part of the Vedas, right? So it's talking about the Karma Kand section. As we all know, the Vedas have two major sections, which is the Karma Kand, which talks about more of the rituals, practices, and the correct way of performing the rituals along with certain mantras. And the other half, which is the Gyan Kand, is more to do with Jnana Yoga or more emphasis on spiritual realities and realizations. And so in this particular sutra, a comparison is being made between the Karma Kand part of the Vedas, which has certain qualities to it, and then also the kind of solutions and the kind of inquiry that Sankhya is aiming to make, because according to this text, the solutions which are provided in the Vedas in the Karma Kand section are only temporary in nature, in the sense that they will help us alleviate pain for the moment, but those rituals, just the rituals without the knowledge, will not take us to the next level, will not help us to come out of the cycle of birth and death by knowing the truth between the difference of the Purusha and the Prakriti. So therefore, in this sutra, it is being made very clear that such an inquiry and the reason why Sankhya Karika is being undertaken is very valid, because while it does believe in the Vedas and it uses the Vedas as its stepping stone and foundational book, still it believes that there are some limitations that come about as part of the Karma Kand, and because of those limitations of the solutions which are given to overcome suffering, but they have their limitations. Because of that, we need to now get into a much more detailed and much more precise discussion as to how can we find permanent, certain, and never-ending solutions that are precise, that will not repeat the sufferings for us, that will give us freedom from the suffering once and for all. So that is what this second sutra is about. Let's now get into looking at the sutra, breaking it up word by word, and then getting into its meanings. So the sutra itself goes, Drishta vadanu shravikaha sa hya vishuddhi kshayati shayayuktaha tadviparitaha shreyana Vyakta vyakta jana vijanata Drishta vadanu shravikaha sa hya vishuddhihi kshayati shayayuktaha tadavaparitaha shreyana vyakta vyaktaja vigyanata. So that's a sutra, and this sutra basically indicates that. So let's break down each of the words, right? The first part over here is Anushravikaha. So we have a common, a compound word, which is drashta and anushravika. Now anushravika over here is referring particularly to the Vedas, the section of the Vedas that is revealed, and as we discussed before, it's talking more specifically about the Karma Kand. Now from there we go into drishta or drishtavat. Now drishtavat is what is seen or what is known to be the more commonly understood means. So it's kind of saying that this is more commonly seen, or we know that the Anushravikaha, which is the Vedas, which is the Karma Kand, is often used as a solution to alleviate our pains and our sufferings, and it's commonly seen and known. From there it says Sa, it is. So it says Sa, which means it is, and then it's carrying forward. Avishuddhi, right? So it's saying Avishuddhi kshaya atishya yuktaha. So this entire compound section is telling us that even though this is given to us as a solution, it has some amount of impurity, decay, and excess associated with it. These are three important words: impurity, decay, and excess. And then it comes to tadviparitaha, which means the means opposite to both right? So the visible and the Vedic means, right? So these, which are the most obvious means, along with the Vedic means, they also need a further solution higher than them, different from them. So it says Vyakta, Avyakta. So it's saying the discriminative knowledge of the manifest and the unmanifest, which we need, is more Shreyana, which means it's preferable. So we need that knowledge of the Purusha and the Prakriti, which is preferred and more preferable to the knowledge of just the more commonly known uses and also just the more Vedic Karmakand specific uses of alleviating suffering. So that's what this sutra is saying. Now let's get into it a little more in detail. All right. So a lot of us might wonder, right, that how can, if it's coming from the Vedas and it's coming even from the Karma Kand, how can we say that it's associated with excess, impurity and decay, right? And so that's one of the main elements of the sutra where these three words are being used. Now, as you can see, the reason they associate the word impurity with it is because when you look at a particular Vedic ritual, or if we're talking about a particular ritualistic practice, sometimes the ritual may have some kind of a sacrifice or a sacrificial offering that is associated with it, and that sacrificial offering may make it a little bit impure. So this is, remember, it's a comparative analysis between the sacrificial rituals or the ritualistic tendencies versus if we're talking about through dhyan moving towards an element of samadhi and finally getting to know the difference between Purusha and Prakriti. So you have to remember that it's not impure in general, this is more comparative analysis. So when you look at it comparatively, then you can see that these rituals may have a slightly more impure essence to them as compared to certain other practices. And I also want to say over here that personally and also from a more Vedic perspective, we of course respect all rituals and we are proud of it. You know, we're especially for me, I believe in and follow the Vedas. But having said that, this is the academic translation and this is the academic meaning of it. So we're just looking at it from that perspective and just to keep that in mind. So that therefore the words have been used such as these, which is comparatively more impure in some ways if that particular ritual has certain ingredients or elements associated with it. And we also know that in some parts of the country and across the world, there used to be and there have been instances of animal sacrifices and usage of animals also as sacrificial elements in these Vedic rites of passage. So in that case also, then it would be considered as we are of course offering an animal or a being for greater good, but at the same time it is invoking a certain amount of sin associated with that, and it is also obviously impure to a certain extent. So while there is a give and take associated with the yajna or with whatever Vedic ritual is being practiced, still it would have a certain element of impurity possibly associated with it. So therefore the word used here is of that nature. Similar for the word for decay and excess is because all of these rituals help us in our day-to-day life. They help us in our connection with a higher divine power. But they may not be able to remove us from the cycle of birth and death and of suffering that comes in between, simply because we have not experienced or understood the difference between Purusha and Prakriti. And because of that, we are still stuck in this sansar, in this world, and we don't have the kind of knowledge that would help us to go from this realm to the next and coming out of the cycle of birth and death. So because of that also, it's considered that there is a certain amount of validity period almost, if you will, of these rituals where it may not help you for the ultimate spiritual aim of liberation, if that's what you're looking for, although it will help you to deepen your connection with the divine, and it also will help in certain shorter term goals and certain things that you're requesting for or asking for, but it may not help with final and eventual liberation, which is of course what we are seeking on the path of yoga. So that is why it has been termed as also not having the kind of longevity that possibly Sankhya Karika's methods could offer. Additionally, at the same time, we have to remember that each of the different rituals and sacrifices were meant for different purposes and for different reasons. So each of them will have, depending on what the yajna or the ritual practice is being organized for, they'll have different aims, different goals, different byproducts, different means, different causes, different effects. And so, they're layered in that sense. But if we're looking to truly come out of the cycle of birth and death and also be able to understand Purusha Prakriti properly, then it would still be a limitation. It would not be able to take us towards the direction that we need to go in. And therefore, it is also, once again, being looked at as a comparative limitation, but not a limitation overall, a comparative one, as compared to doing our inner work and understanding the difference between Purusha and Prakriti. Additionally, at the same time, a lot of Vedic rites and rituals have Soma associated with it, which was considered to be quite a phenomenal drink, which was used in a lot of Vedic rituals and which was almost considered like nectar of the divine. And it is meant to kind of help you alleviate your problems. It also makes you, to a certain extent, superhuman, gives you certain powers depending on how the Soma is made and also the way in which it is prepared. But what the sutra is saying is that that's again a limitation, because it will carry you through maybe this lifetime, maybe it'll help you temporarily, but it doesn't have the kind of permanent solution that we're really looking for. And so while it is useful, it may not be the final thing and the kind of solution that we want to have over a larger and longer span of time. So that is something also quite important here, which is being said that, and I'm going to read this out, which says that, basically, the Vedic means of alleviating pain, such as drinking of soma, could be considered impure comparatively, and also which bring about results that lack permanency and equality. And instead, we need to focus on the purer means, which are unmixed with evil, most permanent, most superior, and they're often declarations of Shruti, right? The memories of the sages and that which is heard, which helps us to have the discriminative knowledge of Viveka Khyati between Purusha and Prakriti. And because of that, we never return then to the cycle of birth and death. So that's essentially what the sutra is saying. It's once again, it's kind of validating its existence. Why was this text necessary? Why is it necessary for us to go this deep into the sutra? It's doing all of that by a comparative analysis between the Karmakand section of the Vedas and, of course, the larger theories and practices of the Sankhya Karika. So that is what we're at so far. And finally, of course, one of the most common questions that might come up in our minds is that, okay, but when does this final knowledge of the discrimination between the Purusha and Prakriti arise? And that only happens through a lot of deep sadhana, out of deep study of the Shrutis, the Smritis, the Puranas, the Itihasa, our own yogic sadhana and practice. And then through many, many lifetimes and study of this type of practice of great depth and great understanding, can one come anywhere near coming out of the cycle of birth and death and going towards that kind of a supreme realization and liberation. So it's going to take some time, and it will, depending on where we are in our spiritual journeys, but they are indicating to us that that will be a more permanent process, a more permanent practice that helps to alleviate pain forever, as compared to temporary alleviations of pain, which, while useful, may not be a long-term solution. So once again, in conclusion, this sutra is simply giving us the reason why we are undertaking this Sankhya Karika and why we're undertaking its studies. What is its usefulness? What is its value add? How is it helping the person who is studying it? How is it helping the sadhak? How is it helping a diligent student? And after having established its usefulness and its value to the reader, after this it now gets into more of the theories and the more theoretical understanding of what actually the Sankhya theory stands for. So in the next sutra, in the next video, we'll be looking at trying to understand even further in this regard. So with that, we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Until then, please take care. I'd also like to mention here that we do have a lot of one-on-one courses, classes, and workshops that we do on yoga philosophy and of course Sankhya. So if any of you are interested or you would like to get in touch, you would just like to talk to us, we'd be more than happy to speak with you. So please feel free to write to us. All the information is in the description, and we would look forward to hearing from you, working with you, and studying with you as well. So I look forward to seeing you and cannot wait to see you in the next video. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.